Well, I've got a story that I'm going to tell. This is actually from many years ago. I thought it was a good time to tell this story because last Friday we had 10.5 inches of snow. And Monday we had another 2 to 5 inches of snow. And I basically had 3 inches that I had to shovel, which wasn't bad. Actually, I don't mind shoveling snow. I guess after, more than 40, 50 years, you get used to that kind of thing. But I want to talk about what happened when I was in college, and it was Thanksgiving that was coming up, and this was my junior year. So I'd only been there for the junior year, basically 2 months. And most people had already left to go home for the holiday. But because I'm one of those lucky people, and I'm not saying good luck, just one of those lucky people, I had to take a test. And I had to take the test at 10, and the bus was going to leave Oswego by 12:45. So at least I had some kind of time. But the dorm was empty, pretty much. Very few people. Like I said, almost nobody had any classes. But of course, I had a test. So here's the thing. I go back, after the test, I go back to the dorm, put my stuff together. And it starts lightly snowing. Not a big deal. This is back in the day when Oswego was averaging about 300 inches of snow a year coming off of Lake Ontario. So you see a little bit of snow, you're not really thinking much about it. Back then, we really didn't pay attention to the weather report. College kids. Probably the ones in Syracuse do that now, but back then, you didn't have that. You could probably try to turn on the radio and see if there was someone you could listen to, but in general terms, you didn't do that. So, I've got my bag, and I'm ready to go. So, I leave the dorm, and I start walking, and I have to go to the entrance to the university. And, because that's where the buses showed up. And I start walking, and the closer I'm getting to where I need to catch the bus, the harder the snow gets. Because it's Oswego, Central New York, that's just how it works. So anyway, I get there, it's like 12:20, and I get on the bus, and I have this thing where I like to sit in the back of the buses so I could see anybody who's coming in because I'm a little paranoid. I'm not really crazy about people being behind me. And the snow just kept coming, and finally, the bus driver waited until 12:55. Made sense because we've got all this snow. We're not sure if there's going to be anybody else. And it wasn't a lot of people on the bus. By the time the bus decided it was time to get on the road, there were probably 6 or 7 of us on there. So we start driving. And the snow has decided it's going to accompany us wherever we're going. And we're on this highway. Eventually, you get out of Oswego, you go down to a town called Fulton, and then you can make 2 different decisions. One, you can go down one of the routes that would take me to where I live, but you're thinking, well, you know what? Let's get on the highway because we should be able to get there, faster. That didn't happen. The snow kept getting harder. And it got to a point where I couldn't see out of the side windows. You could barely see out of the front window where the bus driver was. But the bus driver must have had some skills, or at least some kind of knowledge about this, because the bus driver just kept going. But we were not going at any good speed whatsoever. So I mentioned that we left at 12:55. And where I live, I was about 45 minutes away from Oswego. So you're thinking, you're going to be okay. The bus did not fall anywhere. We didn't have any kind of accident. But the bus had to slow down to a pace where maybe we were going 15 miles an hour, maybe. I don't even think it was that. Matter of fact, it had to be a lot slower because we didn't get to where I needed to be dropped off, which was at a Wegmans grocery store. If you're Central New York, you know everything about Wegmans, but if not, that was the name of the chain. And there was one that was in my town, and I didn't get there until 7:30. So imagine how long that had to take. I can't recall if we ever stopped, but we were going super slow. And you had to do that, one, because of visibility, and two, because the roads are crowded. You know, the roads are just dangerous, full of snow. There's no plows. So we didn't have any kind of plow. Like I said, I give the bus driver all kind of credit. Now, here's another thing. This was back in 1979. We didn't have cell phones. There's just no connecting. So I had no idea. Is my dad going to be there? Am I going to be able to get into the Wegmans parking lot to get inside? I had no change. So it's like, oh goodness, how am I going to call them? I need to use a payphone. That's what we had. We had payphones back then. Still, we get there. I'm the only one there. It turns out everyone else had to go to the city of Syracuse. So at least I was getting dropped off closer to home. And I get out, and I could see that they had at least tried to shovel the parking lot a little bit, but there was still tons of snow everywhere. And it's blowing. I can barely see anything. I got my bag with me. And then I see some flashing lights. And it turns out my dad was there. And he had been there in that parking lot for 4 hours to wait for me, because he also knew there was no way I can call. He can't call anybody. And it's the day before Thanksgiving. And he wanted to make sure that his son was going to have someone waiting for him when he got home. He could have waited, at home. But the truth is that had I made it into Wegmans and been able to have some change so that I could call him, he couldn't have come and got me. And Wegmans was not a 24-hour store. So I don't know what I would have done. I probably would have just had to stand outside Wegmans for a long time overnight. I couldn't walk home because it was way too much snow. But my dad waited for me the entire time. And then we had a very slow ride home. It's amazing the kind of snow that we get here. And I was never happier. Okay, that's a misnomer. But I was real happy that my dad waited for me. Mom was happy that both of us made it home, because, like I said, we didn't have cell phones. So Mom couldn't call. So she had no idea what was going on, and Mom was the worry. I think we used to call them worry warts or whatever, but, she was worried about us. But that's how Central New York is. And, I tell that story because it turns out that we got something like 27 inches. Imagine that. 27 inches of snow. And that was Liverpool. I have no idea how much Oswego got, but it was a mess. But that happens from time to time. And, I just wanted to tell that story because I was so happy that my dad showed up. I'm happy that I actually made it back to Liverpool, New York. I'm glad that I didn't have to go into the city. Whew. But you know what? That's life. And we're projected to have more than the amount of snow that we ended up with here in 2025, because we ended the season last year #1 in the country for snowfall. We beat some town in Pennsylvania by about 1.5 inches, but still, that's not so bad. So we'll see how it goes. Anyway, I hope y'all have a wonderful day. Be safe. Take care. And I'm out.